Hello everyone, it's Elizabeth again, and I'm here making a video about paper making for my friend Connie. She was unable to attend the live that I did earlier in the JJ with Joy group, and so I'm going to do a quick run through of how I make paper. First, I'm going to show the dip method, which you do by having a slurry of paper, and I'll show you how to make that slurry when we get to the pour method. But right now I'm just going to dip this mold and decal into the slurry of paper to make a piece of paper. This is the mold. It's simply a frame which has a screen on it. And then this is the decal, and it's simply a frame which sits on top of it and leaves all of the frame free to catch. This catches the paper slurry as it's trying to slide off the edge of the mold. Then it's caught by the decal and held on there. If you didn't have this, you could still catch some paper, but you probably wouldn't get a really nice thick sheet. So let's get started. The first thing we do is to swish around our slurry of paper in the vat so that it can get some movement to it, so that it won't all be sitting on the bottom, because if you just leave it, it will go to the bottom. Then we dip our mold into the vat and get some of that paper slurry on top of it. You can continue to move it around a little bit while it's in there so that you'll get a really good amount inside the decal. Then when you're ready to pick it up, you kind of pick it up just straight up, and your wood tries to float anyway, so you're good on that. And when you pick it up out of the water, you really shouldn't do what I just did, which was to pick it up all at once, and then it kind of gets an air bubble under it and swooshes everything everywhere. But it still worked. So we have paper pulp that is in the mold, and we want to sit it down in a tray so that we can get the water out of it. If you are doing normal paper making, you would have a set of felts that you would put your paper onto, but I don't have a press, so I simply dry my paper by putting it between blotters and putting it under weight. That's what I have here right now, is a piece of glass with blotters under it that actually have like 3 pieces of paper already in that area. The reason that this is pink is because that when we were doing my demonstration earlier, I did use some red paper in the pulp making process, and therefore it comes up pink on the everything after that will come up a little bit pink. So we take our our decal, and give it a quick douse in the water, which is called kissing off. And what that means is that it's taking all the paper pulp off of the decal itself, and then see, it's nice and clean again. We'll set that over here so it can drain it back into the vat while we're dealing with the piece of paper. Now, since I don't have a felts to put it on, then I can just put a screen over the top and use a sponge to take out as much of the water as I can. And I'm not pressing really hard on this because I don't want to break my paper making mold thing here, because it, the screen stretched underneath of there. And this is ordinary window screen type stuff. I'm just wringing my water back into my vat of water. Got some over on that glass. Okay, so then we've got some of it out. We'll go ahead and take a little more off the tray here, and then I'm going to do what's called couching, whatever you want to call it. I think it's technically couching, but I always used to call it couching because I didn't like the word couching. I thought that was weird. I'm just weird. So anyway, bringing that out, I'm going to couch it or couch it onto a piece of blotter paper since I don't have any felts. So I take off my piece of my screen, and then I'm going to take a piece of blotter paper here. I'm going to lay it carefully on there, and you see that it's already absorbing some water. You can see the water spots on there. So then I'm going to turn it over like this, and hopefully that will just, if I dry this side a little more, it will just let go of this mesh, that is on the mold, and it should just let go of that and go right down onto that blotter paper. And then we can put it between blotter papers and put it in my little press there. Now, to get it dry, what I do is I change my blotter papers from time to time so that they can, so I get fresh blotter papers each time. Okay, sometimes you have to help it by just poking on the screen a little bit or gently jiggling it, and there we have our piece of paper has transferred to the blotter paper. That blotter paper is kind of wet, so let me get another piece of blotter paper that's a little more dry and transfer it to that. So we just pick everything up kind of like a sandwich and see if we can get that to let go of the first one, and I'll go put the first one on the clothesline so it can dry gently. You can just adhere your paper to your window and let it dry by itself there, and you will get a nice slick piece of paper. Sometimes you have to get a razor blade to help you get it off the window, but it will eventually come off. I'll be right there. I should have pressed the pause button, but I didn't. Okay, so I would put that between blotter papers and put that in my press, in essence, to press out. And then before I leave today, before I leave my loft here, I would go ahead and change out the blotter papers so that they can, I'll get dry blotter papers, and then if I have to do it, I'll do that again another time to make it, I'll come over tomorrow morning and switch out the blotter papers to dry ones so that it will suck all the water out of there. Okay, so that is the easy dip method. The hardest part of dip method is knowing how much slurry to have in your tub there, and then making sure that you replace the slurry whenever you take out a piece of paper. Then you've got that much less slurry in there, and you will have to put more out in there. So let me show you really quickly the pour method. For the pour method, I use the Arnold Gummer, Gummer, I believe it is. Yep. Mold. The mold comes with and of course I don't have that. It comes with a mesh, just like that was. Here's a mesh. Oh, everything was moved this morning when I did the other demonstration. And that's a mesh for that one, so that's not the right size. Okay, I'm just going to use the screen in place of a mesh, and it will work. Okay, so you have a grate, which is what that is. You have a mesh that you would put on top of that. We're using a screen instead of it because I'm lazy and don't want to go find the other thing. And then we put our decal, that's what the big thing is really, on top of that. And it's all Velcroed in. Then we lower this into the water, and we want to make sure that there are no bubbles up under the screen. And then we get our blender, and our blender is what I made the slurry in there to start with. And what I do is I fill it 2/3 full of water, and you can just simply dip the water out of this, out of here, and fill that up, and then you add your paper pulp to that. You can use any kind of paper that you have. You can use paper that is, you know, like colored paper that you cut something out of or whatever. I mean, this is cardstock. I can use a piece of that. I can use plain white paper. I can use book pages. I can use the scraps that you get in your daily mail. But the heavier the paper is, the smaller you should really tear it up when you're getting ready to blend it, because blending it's harder on the blades if it has thicker paper. So I didn't do that as much as I should have. Let me grab some of this. I have some just papers up here that I can put a couple of white ones in there to make it a little more interesting. Oh, come on, don't fall everywhere. Okay. So we'll just stick a few of these in there too. This is a pretty good quality paper. I think it's Arches Text Wove. Whatever it is, it'll work fine. Okay, oh, I forgot. I have the bigger one. I was doing small papers today that were 6x9. You can get molds, the Arnold Goomer mold, in either the 6x9 or the 8.5x11 is what I have in there right now. But earlier I was doing the smaller sheets, so that's why I had less paper in there. Okay, we'll see if we've got enough here. And you ask, how much paper should I have? Well, if you lay out your paper on like a flat surface before you get started blending it, then you can figure out how much paper you have, because you need to have as much as the size of the sheet that you're going to make. So if you're going to make an 8.5x11 sheet of paper, then you can lay your papers, your raw paper here on top of an 8.5x11 sheet of paper and find out if it's actually the right size. Because it should be the same size as the paper you're going to make, and basically the same thickness. You're going to have a little blender noise here. Sorry about that. And that might be enough in the slurry. You see what it looks like. It looks like something good enough to drink, but do not drink it, and do not use your blender that you use for your household foods and things. Do not use that for your paper making. Get a blender dedicated to that. Find one at a yard sale. Buy a cheap one somewhere. Anything, but do not use the same blender. You don't know what kind of chemicals are in the colored paper. What they do to make that the orange that it is, or the black, or whatever color it is. And all we have to do here is to pull up the mold and decal together, slowly usually, so that the water can drain out and not, swoosh out. And then we have a lovely sheet of paper, which you can't see because the camera doesn't do the same as it did this morning. But there's the sheet of paper. And I take this mold loose, and then it's still on the grid. So I just take that loose and set that over here where it's out of my way. And set this down here, and then we're going to take some of the water out of it with our sponge, but we should put a screen over the top of it to take that water out. So let me see if I can find another screen that's the right size here. Sorry about that. I should have been a little better prepared. I have to apologize. Okay, so then we just take the water out by sponging it. And the way that you know if you've taken enough water out is if your sponge quits wringing out when you wring it out over your vat. And after you've done that for a little while, you can pick up the grate with it and get rid of all that water that's in there. You've got a lot that you've pushed through the grate. Okay, And then we can get rid of the grate itself and just lay the mesh down on the table. Into the tray. Sorry. And do a little bit more pressing. Get as much water as you can out. And then we'll put it between two blotters. And that'll be that. If you have questions, comments, or just want to say hi, go ahead and make a comment. Please do thumbs up and all the rest of that stuff. There are lots of videos on paper making on YouTube, so if this one doesn't give you everything you need to know, then you can find some other ones, or you can rewatch this again. Okay, so I seem to have a little stickage problem there. Okay, that one needs cleaning out. I have a stiff bristle brush, which I can use on this to help clean it out too. Okay, that did pretty well. Oops, hang there. That looks pretty, doesn't it? Can you see that? Lovely. Okay, we'll put that on I should not bunk it with my finger. Makes it kind of messed up. Put that on a blotter sheet. Still got a lot of water. I should have sponged it a bit more, but alas, alack, I did not. Okay, to get it off the screen, sometimes you have to coax it with your fingers. And there we have that. And put it between blotters and put it into the stack, and that's all there is to it. And then before I leave, or before the end of the day, I will change out the blotters because you can see how wet that is. And I will tomorrow I might have to do it again before they're dry. They may not be dry tomorrow. Sometimes it takes 2 days. It depends on what the humidity is in your area. So I'm finished though. If you have questions or you need to have me do this again, Connie, just let me know. Thanks for watching. Bye.